everybody, welcome back to Sunflower Cottage Crochet. I am Sarah and today is our very first introductory video for Tunisian crochet. So we have a, as of 2021, a crochet along coming, and it will feature learning Tunisian and certain Tunisian stitches for beginners, and we'll at the end put together a Tunisian blanket. I know that sounds like, oh my goodness, how do you do that? Well, that's why we have this series, because we're going to teach you how. So this is the introductory video. It's also going to teach you the very basic things you need to know about Tunisian crochet. So this is one hook out of many that you could use for Tunisian crochet. It has a cool little butt end, much like a knitting hook, or knitting needle, excuse me. And that's to help keep your stitches from sliding off. Knitters will know this. Now you see how it is extra long, and I'm going to zoom out so you can see more of the hook. Okay, so just a little more. All right, so get the yarn out of the way. All right, so this is a nice long standard Tunisian hook. There are some that are just like about this long, and then they'll have a little cable that you can plug into the rear of it with a little butt stop as well that you can add to however long you want your cable to be. Those you can find on Amazon. I'll put a link to those in the description box below. This is a Furls. This one's called Cruella de Vil. It is ash and ebony. It is a 6.5 millimeter. So for Tunisian hooks, if your yarn label says use 5.5 millimeter hook, then you want to go up to a 6.5. And the reason is because the tighter Tunisian stitches are, the more the work is going to curl. And this is not a good example of curling Tunisian work because it is worked in the Tunisian purl stitch. But I do want to show you that what will happen is the bottom of your work will continue to curl up like so as you're working it with all the other Tunisian stitches. But a purl stitch shoves the yarn in front, and it therefore makes it straighten out. I can't really explain it any better than that, but as I have a video for the purl stitch, you'll see, because I'm going to have individual videos for each individual stitch. This is the back of what a Tunisian purl stitch will look like. So with Tunisian crochet, everything is worked in the front. You never turn your work. It's always worked on the front side of your work. And much like knitting, you gather up loops and then you work them off. But you're only using one hook instead of two needles, okay? So if you're like me and one hand's dumber than the other, hello left hand, I'm looking at you, then this will be easier for you because you're only using one tool to make something that looks knitted, but with crochet. So this is crocheting for knitters or knitting for crocheters, but it's really Tunisian. So with that in mind, I'm going to teach you the technique, because everything starts off with an actual technique that is applied to all of the different stitches, okay? So like normal, there's a foundation row. So in normal crochet, that would just be a chain, or if you're really cool, then you're doing the foundation single crochet, foundation half double crochet, or foundation double crochet stitches. In this case, it's going to be a chain. Sorry, you have to go back to that. So we always start with the slip knot on the hook. And if you're curious, the yarn I'm using is Mary Maxim yarn called Starlit Sparkle. It is a 4-weight, but it's a slightly chunkier 4-weight. So I'm using the 6.5 to accommodate it. All right, moving on. So you'll chain up the number of stitches that the stitch that you're going to work calls for. So some stitches have a multiple and some don't. just like in normal crochet, single crochets don't have a standalone stitch, single crochet, half double, double, they don't have multiples, but they do have that extra chain up at the end of your foundation row, like chain 1 for single, chain 2 for half double, and 3 for double. Well, in Tunisian, there is no chain up extra or anything, unless the pattern specifically calls for it. That's different. But for beginner purposes and foundation row purposes, we're only going to make a simple chain of however many stitches you want to do. Now, I'm going to recommend that for this video, you do a swatch, and that's 4 inches. So 4 inches wide. We're not even going to work up rows yet. We're just going to do the foundation row for this video. So after you do your chain up, so I'm going to chain up like 12. All right, so there's my 12, okay? Just like normal, nothing different there, crochet related. Totally different for knitters. All right, so now we're gonna do what's called the cast on, and the cast on consists of gathering up loops. Now, this does count as a stitch. Normally it does not. It does for knitting, it does not for crochet unless it's Tunisian. So this is the first one here, so it's technically already gathered, okay? So here's our next chain. I like to flip over and grab the back humps. That very first back hump is right here, okay? But because we already have the loop on the hook, we're gonna skip that one and go into the next one. So like normal, you go into the second chain from the hook. All right, so you're going to insert your hook. You don't have to do the back hump if you don't like to. I do. It also does help reduce the amount of curling on your work though, so just throwing that out there. Then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, just like you would if you were going to single crochet. Now, if you were single crocheting, you would just yarn over and pull through 2, right? But we're not doing that. We're doing Tunisian. By the way, this is how you can correct a mistake. Just pull out the yarn over, pull through, and now you still have the loop you gathered. So again, I'm going to go into the next chain, the back hump, or whatever loops you're working with. I'm going to insert, I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull up a loop. Do you see something? Okay, I'll give you a hint. I haven't worked any loops off yet. All right. And we're not going to just yet. We're going to gather up every chain to the end. So I'm going to continue inserting into the next chain and pulling up a loop until I have gone all the way back down my chain. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, inserting into the next chain and pulling up a loop. It's like starting a single crochet but not finishing it. Kind of like you would do if you were decreasing. Except we're not going to decrease. There's some magic involved in Tunisian, you'll see. And yes, the foundation row, just like all foundation rows in crochet, is going to be the most annoying and sometimes the most difficult part of the pattern, but that doesn't mean it's super hard. It's just the most difficult part. All right. So as I keep going here, and yeah, it is difficult for the back humps, but in my opinion, so worth it in the end, and this is the only time you're going to have to do that. Though there have been plenty of times when I'm like, okay, done trying to do that, and then I'll frog and then pull from the regular stuff. We all have our moments, right? Okay, sorry about that. My extremely long hook tapped the mic. All right, so here I am in the last one before the slip knot. Make sure you grab that one too. That is called the edge stitch. So now I want to point some things out. So we have our beginning right edge, and then we have our ending edge, left edge stitches. These two are different from the rest of these bars or stitches. So now to continue working this, we're going to chain up one. So we're going to yarn over and pull through one loop. Okay, now that is going to make our edge stitch for the next row. Okay, so the cast on is also known as the forward pass. Okay, so but for the foundation row it is called the cast on. Okay, and now to continue finishing up our foundation row, we're going to yarn over, and we've already chained up one, but now we're going to pull through 2 loops at a time. Now we're finishing those single crochets in reverse order. So yarn over and pull through another 2, yarn over and pull through another 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, all the way down, pull through 2 until you only have 1 loop remaining on your hook. So I'm continuing with yarning over and pulling through 2 until I've got just the 1. And now we've also made our right edge stitch, and we have our left edge. Now this left edge is something that we need to focus on, because you're going to need to know that you need to insert your hook through the 2 legs of the stitch. Each Tunisian stitch is made up of legs, okay, or bars. So as you can see, now I'm going to zoom in. Okay, as you can see, there are several bars. This is a bar, that's a bar, 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 bar. Okay, several bars. And again, this is the right edge and the left edge. We don't ever insert our hook into the right edge stitch, which looks like the first vertical bar, because that would be increasing our stitches. To start our first forward pass, we will be inserting behind this bar, and you're only grabbing 1 leg of the stitch. The stitch, again, is made up of 2 legs. Okay, so we have, see if I can get this separated here. There it is. So we have 2 legs. We have a front and a back leg. It's actually on the back side of the work. Okay, so when you're working, say, a Tunisian simple stitch, you're going to go between those bars and pull up the front bar only, and then you'll yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you'll do that in the next one. Okay, and then you'll have that next bit of casting on. Okay, I'll show you that in a moment, but I wanted you to see, physically see, the 2 legs of the stitch. Okay, and then to be able to identify the front bar and the back bar. Okay, and again, that edge, left edge stitch, you need to grab both of these loops here on the end and pull up a loop, and then you chain 1, and that makes the next one of these that you go through. All right, so I know this is a lot to take in, but don't worry, you'll get it, especially as you continue to work on these things. So there is also, in addition to the vertical bars, as you can see, there is also a gap here and a gap here and a gap here. So these gaps with this mess up here, this is the upper bar, okay? And as you can see, it technically has 3 loops. It has a loop down here and the 2 up here. So it's kind of like the actual, an actual stitch. So Some stitches require that you just go under the bar. In fact, that's what you'll do a lot of times to increase stitches in Tunisian crochet. Then there is also a lower bar, but that is not something we're going to worry about for beginners because it does include more advanced stitches. So there are other places you can stick your hook, okay? It's not just the front bar or the upper bar. It's also between the front and back bars from the front to the back of the work. In fact, that's where you insert your hook to make a Tunisian knit stitch, which you guessed it looks exactly like a knit stitch in knitting. Okay, so again, that was between the front and the back bars, right between and out through the back. Okay, another place is, of course, through the bars. Again, those are more advanced stitches. But then there is, again, for Tunisian full stitch, instead of it, in this case, it wouldn't be increasing because you're not also gathering up the bar. You're only gathering the horizontal bars. So you would insert your hook in here, yarn over, and pull up a loop all the way down the row. Something else I want to tell you about Tunisian crochet. So this, again, we did the foundation row of a cast on and then a return pass. Every row in Tunisian crochet consists of 2 passes. Okay, we have a forward pass which edges to the left and a return pass which comes back to the right. And it takes both passes to make one row. Okay, so bind off is another term that is more knit related than it is crochet. So for the Tunisian crochet, because it is a combination of knitting and crocheting, you cast on and then you need to bind off. To bind off, your row is going to start out like this, like normal, okay, with all gappy and holy. And we're going to grab up like we normally do, go into the bar and pull up a stitch. Now there's 2 ways to do this. You can just pull through like that to kind of do a slip stitch. Just like that, a slip stitch. Okay? Or when you insert, you can pull up a loop and then do a single crochet. Single crochet bind off is good if you're going to do a single crochet border all the way around your work. Sorry about that. So again, I'm just gonna grab up a loop and then just work a single crochet. So that gives you a taller and more obvious, hey, I recognize that stitch. So now we're only doing a forward pass because we're completing each stitch as we go forward. There will be no return pass. So again, the slip, which is the most common, is to just yarn over and then pull through the 2 loops on the hook. So yarn over and pull through both loops. Okay, yarn over and pull through both loops. And you're going to do that all the way to the end, and when you get to your edge stitch, you insert your hook like you normally do for an edge stitch through 2 loops like so, and then there it is. So there's some single crochet stitches and some slip stitch, so you can see right here is my singles. So that's how you bind off. So the next thing to learn is the actual stitches themselves. So I do want to show you, this is really just a Tunisian simple stitch grid, and then this is the back of it. It does look a lot like a purl stitch in knitting. So a lot of the back side of Tunisian stitches will look very similar to this. Some of them will have a waffly look to them, but a lot of times this is what it's going to look like. So keep an eye out for the Tunisian simple stitch video that's coming up next, and get our crochet along started. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.